Well, for more, we're now joined by Rachael Henry, who is the head of advocacy at the Institute for Public Policy Research. She joins us from London. Thank you so much for being with us. First of all, I just want to get your thoughts on what you made of the King's speech. This was obviously a chance for Keir Starmer to try and refocus on policy. Did it shift the narrative at all for him?
Look, I think that's exactly what it was. I think it was a bit of a welcome respite from all of the, leadership squabbling and politicking, and really the need to refocus on policies that can actually change people's lives. We had local elections in the UK last week, and the electorate sent a clear message that they are sick of politics as usual. They do not think the status quo is delivering for them anymore, and they are willing to throw the dice. And this makes sense in many ways. This isn't, problems that have just come about in the last couple of years. There are long-standing, entrenched and deep problems in the UK. Since 2008, real wages have basically flatlined. In the last parliament, we had the sharpest declining living standards on record. So it's no accident that people are angry and they are really looking for bold solutions.
Right.
So we really do need to focus the debate on policy.
Yeah, like you say, the local election results were brutal for Labor. Voters didn't just drift away, they went in multiple directions, to Reform, to the Greens. What did Labor fundamentally get wrong or misread about the public? And is a reshuffle or a new leader, if you get rid of Keir Starmer, even going to fix that?
Look, the government has come into really, really tricky circumstances. A lot of things are, difficult in the UK at the moment in terms of, the economy. So it was a difficult inheritance. And I think rightly, people's expectations were really high. They'd really wanted change for a long time, and they really wanted a government that was going to deliver. Look, arguably, the government really has done some bold policies that will deliver for people, but change, doesn't happen overnight. But look, I also think that any government, whether it is this government or whether it's another leadership, really does need to meet people at their demands and deliver bold and decisive policies, because people are just sick of the status quo. So I work for an organisation, the Institute for Public Policy Research. We put forward policy ideas that we think really can deliver some of those bold solutions. So, for example, last week we put out a proposal asking the government to think about rent caps. We just basically want to emulate some of, the very sensible policies that we see European neighbours in France, Spain and Ireland do, that protect people from their landlords just arbitrarily and suddenly increasing their rents. I mean, it's quite shocking that in the UK you can be living in a private rented flat, and at any moment your landlord could just suddenly increase your rent. So we think people need to be protected from that, and we need a mild rent cap to be put in place with inflation and wage rises.
Now, many of his own MPs want Starmer gone. Junior ministers are resigning as well. Now we're hearing Wes Streeting, one of the most senior figures in the cabinet, could potentially quit and start his own leadership bid. Is Starmer still in his post, though, because there's no real credible challenger ready to step forward, or is it just a matter of time before he loses the Labor leadership?
Look, that's a question for the leadership contenders in the Labour Party. I can't speak to the internal, machinations of the Labour Party. What I can speak to is what any of these kind of leadership contenders should be thinking about in terms of a policy agenda that will be popular with people and that can really set the UK on the right path. So I think they need to really think about bold solutions. I spoke previously about rent caps. I think fundamentally the biggest overriding challenge, facing any government and that people are crying out for change on is living standards. We had the sharpest declining living standards on record in the UK, and prices people are still really, really struggling with. So rent caps is one thing that I think we should look at. I think the government also are going to need to think about an energy price cap. The war in Iran has produced a really significant energy shock, and we think that they should cap energy prices at £2,000.
OK, well, we'll have to see how everything plays out for Keir Starmer as well as the Labor Party. Thank you so much, Rachael. We'll leave it there for the moment. Rachael Henry, Head of Advocacy at the Institute for Public Policy Research in London. Thank you.